I remember as I grew up, in fact, I think I mentioned it in my book, I used to stay at home and just wait for them. Are they going to return in one piece?
Now, today's guest, Lurata Lyon. You may have heard of her. She has a best-selling book called Unbroken, Surviving Human Trafficking.
Can you imagine a girl from a village, Muslim girl, never had a boyfriend, just run away from the soldiers back home because they were about to massacre you, and now I end up with two American strangers, police officers, in their apartment giving me shelter.
Her story will blow your mind. It's one of the most moving stories I have ever been able to witness. And I know for sure you will not only get something from this, but you'll fight and want to champion Lurata yourself, just like I do, afterwards. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the podcast. Now, today's guest, Lurata Lyon. You may have heard of her. She has a best-selling book called Unbroken, Surviving Human Trafficking. In the former Yugoslavia, she was kidnapped. She was raped twice a day for 6 months, and a horrifying ordeal as a victim of human trafficking. But she recovered, which is the positive. And now she teaches people how to overcome challenges and to deal with resilience. Her story will blow your mind. It's one of the most moving stories I have ever been able to witness. And I know for sure you will not only get something from this, but you'll fight and want to champion Lurata yourself, just like I do, afterwards. Let's cue the music and get into this epic story. So let's talk about the megaverse, the internet of people. Shaping the next iteration of the internet, Megaverse is powered by revolutionary blockchain technology built on decentralized community ownership. It offers users, brands, and businesses a seamless, regulated, and transparent opportunity for growth, revenue, and community building. Megaverse is accelerating user adoption and achieving these goals through multiple verticals like Megachain, a high-performance blockchain for tamper-proof transactions, Megafile system for encrypted decentralized storage, and Mega Studio, which democratizes development through collaborative and AI elements. Organizations across industries like Dubai Multi-Commodities Center, Dubai World Trade Center, and Ras Al Khaimah government have already explored the lucrative potential of a Megaverse presence. Megaverse enables users to create a Web3 future for the people where technology serves human purposes. Dive in and discover the Internet of People with Megaverse today. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the podcast. The story you're about to hear is from somebody who shared this with me some months ago. I was deeply moved by what she had to say, and I knew that you guys had to hear this story. I just knew that something had to happen to get this out to you. So without further ado, let's just go into it and start off with my friend, Lurata.
Hello, Spencer. My friend.
Thank you for coming to do this episode.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I think we talked about this about 6 months now. It's like, let's get it done. And maybe it's longer than 6 months. How long ago was it when we met?
No, but
time just seems to have flown by.
Yeah, manifestation is what works.
And you've obviously, I know you've told this story many times, and I understand that some of it's quite painful to go through. But in my journey of learning about human trafficking and child slave labor and the stuff that is going on and making the documentary, I met some incredibly strong people. People that had been through stuff that was just so unimaginable that for me as the untrained person, I just couldn't understand how people could get through the other side of that. But they do, and there's kind of hope. And I think your journey is a journey of hope. So take me back to the times when you were young and tell us a bit about yourself as a youngster and what mum and dad were like and what life was like being a kid.
I love that time, really. I still, somehow, it's funny, I said this on one of my speeches, sometimes as painful as the past may be, or as sweet as it may be, somehow we always tend to cling back to the past, because those emotions that we feel, that we remember from that particular time, is what makes us feel alive now. It made us feel something then, and we want to re-feel it. And it's really bizarre I'm saying this to begin with, but when I go back, a young girl, Muslim girl, living with mom and dad, both professionals. My mom was a professor of languages and my dad was a doctor. I was the only child. My mom couldn't have children, so I was quite special when I was born. They even referred to me as a gift in Turkish, because my mom is Turkish, and I always say to Turkish people, my name is Hediye, because it is really a gift. But they couldn't call me a gift because it doesn't exist back home, really. It's not what you call your children. And they chose Lurata anyway. I am grateful for the name. It's quite powerful. But yeah, I had such an amazing childhood. It was, we were very poor. So the doctors and professors didn't really get paid very much. We are going back to former Yugoslavia. And, but we were, as I always say, so rich in love and respect in the household. My mom and I had so much freedom and so much understanding from my dad. He was always encouraging us to reach for unreachables, as the song says. And they both were activists on human rights over time, having seen what's happening in former Yugoslavia, war and justice with nationalities, different ethnicities, and their rights to have their schools and their names, etc. It's a very complicated matter. But they always... They were huge activists. They would take places on big events and, march with people for the people's rights. And I remember as I grew up, in fact, I think I mentioned it in my book, I used to stay at home and just wait for them. Are they going to return in one piece? Because when you march through for freedom, for the people's rights, it's quite intense, especially with so much conflict back home. So they would come back home my dad was really badly beaten at one point, but never stopped him from wanting to do the right thing. So I think it's really rubbed on me now. I look back, having just won the Human Rights Award myself. It's that kind of stuff shapes you when you're a child, and you actually look up to your parents or whoever is bringing you up. Whatever they are doing, either it can really make you or break you. You either go against it, rebel, or you actually want to be like them. So they became my big role models, which I always wanted to be. I wanted to be a doctor, just like my dad and so on, and wanted to be a doctor because I wanted to help people like him. But then my dad said to me, look, he said, I see you inspired to be like me, but being a doctor doesn't mean, to helping people doesn't mean you just have to be a doctor. There is other ways and you'll find your way. Looking back now, I think his wise words were so precise. Everything I imagined and more, actually, because I have opened myself so much to wanting to make a difference in everyone's world, not just the human trafficking survivors, but I realized that everybody's going through something in their lifetime, and pain is pain. It's a universal experience. A lot of things that we go through, we don't talk about. It seems to be a universal experience. People can relate to what I've been through, even though they haven't been through it. So they can put themselves in that position and say, oh my gosh, she probably will understand what I'm going through. And so just being able to channel that pain is pain. It doesn't get measured by 1 to 10 as the doctors do. Like, oh yeah, what's your pain today, 1 to 10? When I bring that into perspective, it comes to show that I don't measure people's pain just because someone hasn't been trafficked or someone hasn't been kidnapped. I don't dismiss it. For me, I'm here to serve the entire world, whoever needs my message. It doesn't matter what they're going through, domestic violence, bullying at school or bullying at work, whatever it might be, because bullying can happen, abuse can happen in such small doses. You don't even think you are bullying somebody until actually they are really hugely affected. Like small words have a huge impact. You think it's small, you can start calling somebody, oh, stop it, you're just overweight or you're fat, or however you want to refer to them. That really has an impact in that person. If they're hearing it day in and day out, even if it's in a jokey way, that will eventually mess up with their mental health. They start doubting themselves. They start not looking at themselves as beautiful, as as the way they are, and therefore they can't create change in work or themselves. So when I realized that my mission in helping others is a lot bigger than I thought initially, it's been quite overwhelming, but equally such a beautiful challenge to be faced with, because now I just need platforms to literally reach people and see how my content or how my experience could help them make changes, positive changes in their life.
So take me back to this life that you had. Were you a daddy's girl or a mummy's girl? Who was your hero when you were growing up?
It's really that's a really good question, actually, because I was raised in a Muslim community, and nowadays it's changed so much. When I look at my Muslim friends and just overall, it's very different dynamics between daughter and father kind of a relationship. It's become more westernized, and there's nothing wrong with that. But because where I was raised, there was not much of a physical closeness with the father, especially when you develop and you hit the teenage years, you become a little bit more distant physically because you start developing. So therefore you feel like not too close to your dad because you are changing. But I just remember because with my dad, he was the soother in the family. He would always soothe me. And
almost like a sage.
Honestly, that man, I think not just for me, for everyone, people used to come to him for wisdom, and they still do. My mom is amazing with children at school, like students and stuff. She has the nerves of steel, but I think with me, she was a bit more sharp because she wanted me to do well. And I think maybe just because she didn't have a mom when she was growing up, her mom died, left her very young. So maybe she didn't have a very, she didn't know how she should be as a mom, but she was amazing in terms of love and care, but she was a bit more strict with me.
And who are you more like, mom or dad?
I think I'm more dynamic as my mom when it comes to approaching things, but the depth when it comes to helping people and being there for people, I become more like my dad. I become all ears and sounding ground, kind of sounding board. I become very solid, very calm. So I think I'm between the both. But overall in life, dynamically, I'm more like my mom because my dad is really slow, moving at all times, very quiet. My mom is like, come on, let's get it, let's clean, let's go, let's do this, shopping, this, that. And I think I can be like that, but not that hectic.
So paint a picture for me of what the former Yugoslavia looked like. If I look at it on a map, I can see that it's close to Mediterranean areas, and so the weather must have been nice with long summers. I imagine being part of the Soviet Union, you had that with the image that most Western people have of what a Soviet or a communist country might have been like, where kind of everybody was equal, it was relatively safe, and everyone kind of conformed. Is the picture that I'm trying to present to you, is that fair? Is that correct? What was it like?
You're quite right. Actually, I don't remember this era because I was born and then everything changed. Tito died. Tito was our prime minister or president of Yugoslavia then, and he kept the peace. As a communist country, I think we were the only ones that were allowed to travel, in fact, had the right to travel around Europe because my dad traveled the world. I say the world, Europe, for them it was the world then. And they didn't need visas. They didn't need any specific kind of like some communist countries were quite restricted. But
hold on, this is a really interesting point because my wife is from Uzbekistan. And so, again, a Soviet country. And I learned from her parents about what it was like back then, and they're like, it was fine. We enjoyed life back then. And again, like you said, your dad used to travel, Anna's grandfather used to travel all the time as well. But I think what we failed to understand in the West is that if you look at all of those communist countries, that was a big chunk of the world anyway.
Yeah.
There was a lot of the world just in there. So traveling even further can kind of like you encapsulate just in the Soviet countries, you encapsulate a big chunk of the world as it was.
I really don't remember it because I was born in the 80s. So
hold on, let's put the timelines on this. So what year were you born?
1980. Everybody's going to know. Yay.
No one's asking your age. So 1980.
It's fun.
And then I did.
spring chicken.
So then tell me what year did the communism end in the former Yugoslavia?
Gosh, I don't really know about the whole communist thing, but what I've been told is that they were free to travel. Then Tito died and the trouble started because Tito kept the peace. He had this thing about keeping all the religious people, respecting religious practices and ethnicities, and he didn't really have he didn't create a divide, basically. And then he died. As soon as he died, I don't remember this again. I was so like a baby, and I think it started splitting. So Slovenia was the first sort of county, or what? How would you
state?
States, yes, that's it. Thank you, Spencer. The first state to say, oh, actually, we better get away from this because Tito's gone now. We just messed up. And so luckily they split from former Yugoslavia quite quickly, quite swiftly. And which other country? Then I think Croatia tried to do the same, and the war really hit Croatia and Serbia really badly, amongst with Bosnia. And it led from people wanting to have their own little countries and not be the small states anymore, and away from Serbia regime, which was to be really proper communist and restricted and authoritative and borderline Nazi kind of style, if I may say so.
Yeah.
And then they ended up having a huge war in Croatia with Serbia, and then they don't really fully like each other very much. And then Bosnia fell a victim of it because Bosnians, there's loads of Muslims in Bosnia that speak Serbian. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing, we're all the same. We just have different religions. Like people here in the UK, we have so many different religions. Mm-hmm. We also have Jewish people that lived in Yugoslavia. And so they targeted the Muslim communities for ethnic cleansing because they wanted their rights. I don't really know what the complex was with Bosnia. I just saw it long ago, but I just remember being a huge war. And then it sort of started spreading. Macedonia wanted to have their own rights. And I think Macedonia managed, Northern Macedonia, because I think Greek people in Greece will be very upset with me right now saying Macedonia. But Northern Macedonia, they managed to have their own little country without much trouble, without much resistance from Serbia, which was fine. Now, when Kosovo, this is so many states, and it's complicated. When Kosovo, and I really have to stand here for the Kosovan people because what happened and I'm from Serbia, I was born and raised in Serbia, but what happened with the Kosovan nationalities when they served in the Serbian army, and I mentioned this quite clearly in my book, like loads of details, the soldiers that went from Kosovo were Albanian-speaking Muslims that went to Serbia in the north to serve the army, just to serve in the army. This is before the war really started fully. They never came back. And when they got back, they were already dead. They said they were telling the mums, oh, they died during practice, or it's an accident, or serving the war with Croatia, etc. It took one mum after they buried, because they weren't allowed to even see the funeral, the body. Oh. And so this was on the news. We heard it. And because we live so near with Kosovo on the border, this mum said to the community, to the village, she said, now the soldiers have gone, my son is buried, can we open? She said to the imam, Muslim mum, and the imam said, it's not a done thing, but if you want to open it, she said, I have this feeling, I need to see my son, I need to wash him, I need to clean him before we bury. We can't just bury like Christians do. That's what she said. Anyway, they digged him out only to find that he had this T shape on his body. There's been
scar,
massive scar, and it was all stitched up. It was stitched up. I don't know why they even bothered, but it was massive scar, massive. So this then became the news. Then the nation in Kosovo decided to throw riots. They're like, well, what's happening? Why? And they refused to go and serve the Serbian army, because they didn't know if they're going to come back. So the fear grew. They created their own army, which was a Kosovo Liberation Army. It wasn't considered legal. so it was an illegal army that was formed in Kosovo to protect the people. And I understand why they did that. I don't take sides. I just take side of the truth. I always speak the truth for myself, what happened, and for what I witnessed. And so then the Serbians decided to take all their schools in Kosovo away from speaking Albanian to making them all in Serbian. So the nation said this shouldn't be done because we have the right to have schools on our names. So it became a big deal. The Kosovo War was just horrendous, same as Bosnia War. It became a lot of massacres. I mean, the graveyards in the fields were horrendous by the Serbian soldiers at that time, what they did to Kosovans. Children, women, I mean, I get goosebumps. And so hence why the war where we found ourselves in this position as a town was because Kosovo was on our doorstep. We were just divided by a border, which was a mountain, and we were on the crease of that mountain. That's where we lived. And then Serbia was hitting Kosovo, and we were like in a rain of fire. But because our town is a Muslim town, the soldiers decided, okay, well, since UN decided all of a sudden to enter Kosovo to protect Kosovo, they turned the heat on us. And they decided to do the biggest massacre that's ever been because the town was so big, the village, a massive village with huge amount of people living there in hundreds of thousands of people. So they said, okay, well, if we do a huge massacre, we can show NATO that you can't just enter Kosovo to protect peacekeeping. And this is what we can do. So that was the turning point for us as a family, as a collective, as a village. And it's never been the same.
So what then happened?
What happened then?
So what happened then? Tell me about that journey.
So it just almost like we knew the war was coming, but we were watching it on TV and we thought, okay, when it's so far away, even if it's like 30 kilometers away, it seems like far away. And then all of a sudden it's like your house is being bombed or you're being marched out of your house with soldiers with their guns and so on.
What did you see at first? Did you see just lots of military personnel? Did you hear things at first? What was your first kind of like, this is...
Siren.
Siren
Went on the next sort of town where we had the post office, because the village was huge, but then we had a slightly more developed town where where, you have the bus stops or, the bus stations, or you have the ambulances, etc. So a bit more developed. But the siren went off then, and that siren will always stay. That was the first time they used to do like, trial. They would try the sirens every so often.
Yeah.
But as a kid, you think, it's just testing.
Yeah.
But when it happened, we knew it wasn't testing because nobody knew it was being tested. It was random. And the siren was the first thing, and then we started seeing the big vehicles and tanks approaching in the field towards the village.
So you saw these tanks approaching, not up the main road coming into town, they were in the fields.
Yeah, so they come, because where my parents' house is, we have fields in front. There is one road that goes on the right here, and it's sort of undeveloped road, just like just dusty kind of. Now it's developed, but it never was developed. It was just a road that the farmers used to go to the fields.
Sure.
And then the other roads were a bit more developed. So we saw them from this side, and then we saw them from the field, because they literally barricaded, is that the right word? They wanted to make sure this town wasn't going to escape. So nobody was allowed in and out from that town. And
see, I'm just trying to paint this picture so I can understand it. So I'm picturing this kind of like picturesque town or village, essentially in the valleys with the mountains, green trees, lush, pretty farmland, stuff like that, forests and stuff.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, and then that there's stuff going on TV, so you can see it on the telly, but it's not close enough to have any real impact on you. Yeah. And then you hear these sirens, and you're like, shit. And then you see tanks. That on its own, if I was picturing that, That would terrify me. What did it make your dad and you feel at the time?
You never feel smaller than I did that day. You just feel like an ant surrounded by giants, because you can't go against tanks. We are unarmed. We're civilians. We're not an army. And what we had seen, seeing the torment in Bosnia on TV, the massacres and stuff, because UN troops entered that first before they entered Kosovo. And now what's been happening in Kosovo and the unrest and it didn't go from like being all like, sing and dance and then boom. It was building up, but we thought we just about escape it, perhaps because we are in Serbia. Nobody thought that the Serbia would turn in its own people, even though, because we are Serbians by nationality, although we speak 2 languages more than the Serbians do in the north, Albanian and Serbian, and we practice Muslim religion. We're not Orthodox, but we never had a problem with people, what they practice, because we have Jewish friends, we have Orthodox, it didn't matter. And they made it such a big deal to divide people because of religion and because of the language that was spoken. But that day was, it was cold, Spencer. So you were describing it, but I remember being cold. And I think when you're facing fear, you become even more cold and you can't think straight. I was very scared, but then I could see my dad so calm. And I think his calmness is that brings, like, even if you're facing death and you were someone that's so calm. I've never had to say this before, actually, because nobody ever. It's funny how different people trigger me to say different feelings. Because of his calmness and how much safety he brought to us, even though we were poor, to my mum and I, he brought lots of safety and lots of love and protection that we thought that next to my dad, nothing could happen. And that's something I think all my life I've been searching that since we separated. And I think I've become him. And I said the other day to someone, I've become like, masculine energy, because I want to protect everybody like my dad did. So everything my dad did, I want to do. But yeah, going back, the soldiers...
It's interesting though when you think about that, because to me it's this real sense of just safety around him, like the big protector, but like this calm person that once his arms are wrapped around you, you're safe. There's nothing that can go wrong.
Exactly. I think this is why you said earlier, Sage, he just so... Meeting him is believing what I mean. It's, my mentor reminds me of him a lot, and he's become my greatest he saw my journey before I could see this. So you always take someone else to see your journey. There's always someone in life that will see it before you do, because they are vibrating, or they are at a different level in their life and they wish to see you there. They know you have the ability to get there. He saw my entire outcome of where I was going to be and more. He often says, darling, you've exceeded my expectation. I'm so proud of you. And he's a family friend. But Gilles is one other person that reminds me of my dad's energy. And so he's got that. I often, when I used to have trouble with collecting my thoughts or feeling the fear, I would reach out to him. His wife is equally the same. They both have such soothing people. But yeah, Gilles has been my dad's energy moving forward since I've come to the UK, because I think I've always been searching for that. I'm still constantly searching for that. It's really quite strange. I feel like I need that. That's very important for me.
I think everybody needs your dad in their life.
I'll tell him.
I have a grandmother who, when she was alive, she would just put her hand on my hand, and that very second she would hold my hand, everything escaped me. Every stress, every level of anxiety, everything just escaped in that moment onwards while I was with her, because nothing was a problem. You're safe now.
It's the energy, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think we all need somebody like that in our lives just to help us when those times are really tough. It's really interesting. I like your dad a lot. He seems like a really lovely guy.
He's a cool dad. He's a cool human being.
Okay, take me back to this story then, because I'm seeing these tanks coming up these roads and these tanks in the fields and these sirens, and so now it's something's very real, but you don't know what.
Yeah, it's sort of when the soldiers decided when they came into our home, and I remember my dad opening the door and they just like dragged him out, and my mum realized that we had to get out, but she reached out for the coat, luckily by the door, just put one around me, herself and my dad. She just grabbed what was next to the door, and we were confused because we didn't know, why are we getting out of the houses? There's mixed emotions. Are we getting out of the houses because they're going to bomb the houses? You know, like where are...
How old are you?
At that point, this is much later. So this is not even my childhood. This is in my teens. So we were I was 17.
17.
Yeah, so like reaching almost 18. So this is much later, but the unrest has been going on for over a decade. So all my childhood was unrest. I could see, growing up in that, like a building up kind of, we didn't know where we stood always. We never lived for like, in 10 years time plans. It's more like, let's live for today because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
I don't think people realize that kind of like living for almost a decade without a sense of safety and security, or just uncertainty.
Uncertainty, yeah.
Was probably the word.
It was, yeah. My dad worked throughout the time, even when there was, even during the actual war, he would get picked up to go and heal or treat the Serbian soldiers. And, it's just because as a doctor, you can't take sides. You are there to serve the people. You don't make the decision who's right, who's wrong. You're there to save a life. And I think things like that I admire, because he gave the aid regardless of whether they were trying to kill us or not. He was giving them aid. And I think this is why I always wanted to be like him, and I think I have managed to reach that level of, I pity my people that hurt me or people that mean me harm, even if it was to be now. I almost feel sorry for them because I know that I'm here to serve and be as good as I can be. And if I can't do something nice, I won't do something bad. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. So we need to live life like that. It's like, if you can't add value, don't try and ruin someone's life, or don't try and ruin someone's career. Try and practice good, because good will come your way. Mm-hmm. So yeah, let's go back to what happened. So they marched us out of the house into this road that I was talking earlier. And that road leads into other houses. So we were right at the end of the actual town. We're in the fields. And as you go into the town, then leads you into the mountains. And we managed to get hold of my uncle that lived a bit further up, like a block away. But it wasn't just me, my dad and I. It was my mum and I. It was neighbors, the elderly, children, people that were disabled. Everybody was just being pushed out of the homes. And so when we reached my uncle's house, my uncle was trying to resist not to walk until he saw my dad. And they got together and I was whispering, slowly talking about what is happening, where we're going. And my mum and I and my auntie's son, and we were sort of behind them. I wasn't saying anything. I was just taking it all in. It was a daunting moment. It was almost getting dark, very cold, and just the unknown. It was unrest and people crying, babies screaming, soldiers pushing people, just shouting and swearing at the people. And then eventually, after so much marching up slowly, because there's so many people had come out of their homes and it's like a huge crowd, we reached the end into this. When I say crease of the mountain, it's where the mountains fold and there's an opening. It's still there, actually. It's like a little field amongst the whole mountains. And we stopped there, and now we were waiting to see what's going to happen. And they were preparing to shoot us all, to literally make the biggest massacre and then leave it so not NATO can actually. I don't know how they were supposed to then advertise that to NATO or the world what they've done, but it's not something that you have a conversation and say, oh, how are you going to... But I think that they said to my uncle, because my uncle approached them, he was like, what are you trying to do? He's like, we're going to kill you all. Go away, old man. It's like, don't do this, because, they're gonna find you one day and you're going to serve prison. So let the people go. They haven't done anything. And my uncle, bless him, he was a farmer. He was really super wealthy. So comes to show my dad, he used to say to my dad, brother, you're full of brains and you see how much you get paid. I'm just a farmer. He was just messing with my dad. But he was a very good negotiator. And he said to the army, he said, look, I have so much wealth. If I give you the wealth, you can take it away. Run. Don't serve the army. You don't need to serve. You don't need to kill. I know you don't want to do this. I know you've been told to do this, but I'll give you my wealth, all of you here, spare the town. My uncle's idea was to spare the town so people could start running away. Although we couldn't run away, we were like in a frying pan. All the borders were shut, so we couldn't go to Macedonia, we couldn't cross to Kosovo, we couldn't go into Europe. We were there, we were stuck. And it worked. His negotiation worked. So they decided to test my uncle if he was serious, and they went to his house. My mom volunteered to go with him. And my dad was like, she's always volunteering for stuff. It was because, as I said at the beginning, she was like, I need to do this. And she was about getting things done. She went with my uncle, and it's good she went because she's capable, she was strong. She helped my uncle dig. So he had so much gold and money all in the ground. He had hidden it because he said to my dad, I don't trust the banks. And rightly so. In those days, he didn't trust the banks. I don't blame him for that. But time had passed. The soldiers retreated themselves, and we were left in this mountain. They said, do not move, just stay here. And after a while, we were all whispering, what should we do? Should we leave? We left and reached my uncle's house, my dad, I, and his wife and kid and my grandfather. And only to find my mom and dad sitting on my uncle and my mom sitting on my uncle's doorsteps into the house, crying because they thought they have executed all of us, regardless that they gave all the wealth. So it was that sense of relief when we reunited with my uncle and my mom. But it was quite shocking for me as a kid to walk in and see his garden like a graveyard that has been opened up. There were so many holes, we couldn't even walk. It was everywhere. He'd hidden his wealth. I didn't know what had happened, but then obviously I started understanding they were having a conversation. And that was a turning point for us. Yes, my uncle saved the town. People then start disappearing, like smuggling themselves through the mountains. I don't know what they were doing, but my dad came back from a visit to the town. He said, Lurata, I need you to get a bag with bits and pieces in it. And he said, you need to cross the mountain on your own. Nobody will see you because you're alone, so you won't draw any attention. And go to Kosovo and seek for the Red Cross. And that was the turning point for me when my journey to finding a safety net started after this.
So your dad's asking you to go and get over the mountains, and he's never asked you to do anything like this before?
Never.
Have you ever been over the mountains before?
No, just we used to go into the mountains to look for mushrooms and stuff, but not cross the whole mountain.
Yeah. And so to give me some understanding of the scale of the task, how far was he asking you to go?
Quite far, on foot. By car, it would take you an hour and a half to cross through the actual main road.
Oh.
Yeah, from where we lived.
A long way.
It's a big mountain. Yeah, it was a long walk for me. So I started early in the day and I reached there eventually almost nighttime.
So what was it like walking through the mountains? What were you thinking as you were walking through the mountains? Was your worry about getting to where you had to go? Were you worried about leaving mum and dad behind? What were you thinking?
Initially, I was sad and I was scared to leave him because I knew I would never see them again in my heart. I thought that's it. This is the end. As soon as I started going through the mountains, the first few kilometers were about, oh my God, am I going to be found from the soldiers? The rest of the journey was like, oh my God, is there wolves? Because there's been reported to have wolves and to have, the foxes and so on. So I was really frightened of being attacked by wild animals initially. I mean, I was still young. Now you put me anywhere, I don't care. But I was still young. I wasn't developed enough psychologically. So the biggest journey was about that, like staying alive, not getting lost. I didn't have really much time to think because I was stumbling across all sorts of obstacles. It was a road, it was bushes, and it was disorientating in the mountains. But I probably took longer than I should have because I didn't know which way I was going. But I was thinking if I just go straight, I'll be okay. What I thought it was straight in the mountains. It's never a straight line. And I made it out. When I made it out, it was it was like a sense of like, oh my God, I didn't expect it to be there. And then I realized I was very sheepish because I knew I wasn't supposed to be in Kosovo from Serbia. So I saw this bus, a local bus, and I waved them down. He stopped. I speak Albanian, so I switched the dialect to the Kosovan dialect, so he couldn't tell. He just said, where are you going? I said, I actually need to get to the capital of Kosovo, which is Pristina. He said, but I'm not going there. I'm only going to Gilan. I said, okay, but is there any other bus? He's like, I'll tell you. So we got there. I got the next bus that the driver told me, and the second bus took me to Pristina. And from the bus station to where I next stumbled across is just by chance because I didn't know where to go. So I was just following the main road of Pristina. I ended up in these, people were disappearing because it was watch time. What is it called in the war? I know it, but I've just gone blank. Where you are not supposed to be on the roads a certain time.
Curfew,
that's it. So people start disappearing and I'm thinking, I'm left alone in these streets. What do I do? And luck had it that as I was passing this road, on the side of the road, I heard this noise, like laughter and people and crowd. And I thought, let me see, because at least sounds lively. And I was so thirsty by that point. So I entered this bar. It was a bar. It's like I converted it into a pub almost. And I looked around, Spencer. When I walked in, I remember it like today, and I can't wait to do it in a documentary because these kind of things, I need to get it like visual, because for me, it stood up so much. It was full of uniforms with UN uniforms, like blue helmets and United Nations, basically. And I got really frightened because I thought I shouldn't be here. This is full of army, army is not good, bad news. Got some water from the bar and then I walked out and I sat outside of the door because I didn't know where to go. But luck had it that 2 American peacekeepers, which were serving not as army but as police officers, Peter and Brian, with a translator, they came out. And I was just sitting there by the door and they asked the translator to speak to me in Albanian. They said, what's she doing out of the houses? I said, oh, I'm from Serbia. And the translator obviously was translating everything. They said, she can't be here and she can't even be on the streets. I said, I need to go to the Red Cross, so if you guys could help me get there, I'm much appreciated. And I was quite tearful because I was really overwhelmed with emotions and uncertainty. And Peter and Brian had a chat amongst each other. I didn't know what they were saying. And the translator was just looking at me and he said, listen, they are saying that they can't take you to the Red Cross. I said, well, where am I going to go? He said, well, they are suggesting you follow them. They're going to leave now, pay the bill, and they're going to take you to their apartment. Can you imagine a girl from a village, Muslim girl, never had a boyfriend, 17 years of age, just a bit more, just run away from the soldiers back home because they were about to massacre you. And now I end up with 2 American strangers, police officers, in their apartment giving me shelter. I had no choice. I had no choice but to accept that. I had to accept it.
And you didn't speak English and they didn't speak?
I didn't speak a word in English. Can you imagine? How's my English now?
So literally you've gone into this apartment and you don't know what they're saying and they don't know what you're saying. So you're just trying to suss it out.
Yeah.
But
they had the translator with them when they were on duty.
Yeah, but when they weren't on duty?
That's it. Nothing. We couldn't. They were just trying to make gestures and for food. We sort of understood each other, like food, water. They would bring it to me and I'd say thank you in Albanian. And they started learning some. I was really surprised how quickly they had picked up some key words in Albanian, like thank you and, things like water. And I was like, wow, they were really trying. So I got to give that to them. They were trying to speak Albanian quite a bit, but not fluent, but words. And then my intentions was, okay, I'm getting shelter. And in my mind, I thought the next day they'd just do something, send me to the Red Cross. That never happened. And I stopped questioning them because I realized I was really safe with them. I was so respected and safe. And quite frankly, I was scared to even explore any other options. I was so frightened what it might look like after my experience back home. So decided to stay. The translator said, when they're not with you, you never leave the apartment. You only leave when they come and they want to take you out. And I understood that. And I said, okay, fine. But in the meantime, while I was in the apartment, it was 2-bedroom apartment. In the kitchen, they had a sofa where I slept. And it was a fairly small, the little balcony was cold. It was almost snowing, really cold. I started cleaning when they were not there because nothing to do. This is my mum's side comes in. Cooking, cleaning. I was like foraging in the fridge to cook some food for them because they would leave a time, what time they're back or what time they have a break. Every break, they would come in and check on me. And so I was cooking and they were like so grateful because they had this little room, which I haven't mentioned before. It was full of army food. Sometimes they gave it to me, these dry biscuits and stuff and some containers, some like sachets that they rip and they eat. I'm like, what is this? Let's cook. Like, I don't need this kind of food. And my cooking was fairly simple, but I learned from my mum to cook. So I was making fresh stuff. And we became best of friends. Their uniform was washed and they were very grateful, but they didn't ask me to do any of it. But they started seeing our ways. And I mean, I just thought it was one way to say thank you for what you're doing for me and keeping me safe. And then we became really good friends. So they would take me to their events and parties, and the whole UN learned about this girl from Serbia that they had to keep safe. So
how long does this last for? How long were you with them for?
Oh gosh, more than a month.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of months.
You really established a bond in that couple of months.
A couple of months, up to 3 months. Because Spencer, you have to, please forgive me everybody. When I did the book, I had to call Brian and ask him for time frame. I've written it down and I haven't read it again because for me, time frame after what happens next, it's really, it became like I lost track of time.
Sure.
From stress, and stress can make you forgetful and can make you all sorts of stuff. But I genuinely, once I reunited with Brian over the phone and through social media, he helped me put time frame on the book because I had to ask people like for advice, like what was the year and when did it, because
makes sense.
It really, I blanked, there's a lot of timeline I've blanked. I know it happened, but I don't know how months, So
in that period of time, you've got these two utter gentlemen that are just doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
I so miss them so much. Oh, I really miss them.
And you have these two wonderful human beings that are making sure that you're all right. You're busy cooking for them, cleaning, and they're wondering about how crazy you are. And it must have felt nice to feel protected.
Honestly, I owe them so much. My biggest dream is to speak to American audience just to thank Peter and Brian publicly for what they did for me. Because, a lot of the soldiers, there is bad and good in every, as we are learning right now. It's in my nationality, it's with bad and good, in Kosovo, everywhere. Now, we can't put everybody in the same box. But I'm sure there is mums out there in the United States that their children have served in the army, being in Afghanistan or Kosovo, whatever war they were fighting or they were, sent to fight. They deserve to know that their children might be just like Peter and Brian, that have made such a difference, significant difference to someone's life, and they never mention it. And for me, it's very angelic what they did for me. I admire them because I know they are Christians. So again, going back to how we have been divided over years, over time, culture, ethnicity, religion, gender, you name it, is constantly pushing to divide us. Now man against machine, all sorts. So we're constantly being divided. And where we are meant to stand as one, regardless, and respect each other's beliefs, because ultimately a belief is something that you have it just for yourself, for your soul. And if you believe in God, then you believe that you have to answer to God, and so on. With whatever you believe, it's your right. I would never, as long as it comes in peace. So Peter and Brian, yeah.
These two wonderful men that have had such a positive impact on you.
Yeah.
Save you, and it's a happy ending, and that's the end of the story, yeah.
If only it was. No, so Peter and Brian gave me shelter. And one day I was bored, and I decided to leave the door open of their apartment, walk about 5 meters, which is not very far. It was a stand to get a magazine to read because there was no electricity. We had shortage on electricity and water at times. So it was getting quite, I was going a bit stir crazy and worried about my mum and dad. So I needed something to preoccupy my mind. And I made a mistake. Which I paid it quite greatly. I decided to walk out of their building on my own, which they told me never to leave on my own. But I didn't understand what was lurking in the shadows of that city. And it was daytime. I walked out, and next thing I know is this van that pulls in front of me. And these guys come out of the van, put this thing over my head, and they shove me inside of the truck on the floor, this van, I mean. And they started speaking in Albanian, saying, we've got the spy, we've got all sorts of names. They're calling me every name under the sun. And all I want to do is wake up from the nightmare. I'm thinking, this is not happening. What's happening? This is not happening. So I just realized I was kidnapped. Whilst I'm lying there, I was like, this is not right. This is not what it should happen. This is like a film. What the heck is happening? And not long drive, like it was quite soon after the drive began, which I now know exactly where the building is because I've seen it after. They took me to the building inside, and on my knees, they dragged me all the way in. They took off this hoodie, and there was a man standing there with a crutch. Oh, he said, this is the one. And here I am on my knees. I'm trembling from pain, in terms of mental pain, thinking, I'm scared. What is happening? He said, boys, flip her on her back, and I'd like to watch the rape, basically. And I very quickly, I realized, because I was like flipped on my back, and they were pinning me down, and all my clothes came off, and I'm looking at the ceiling, but I am stiff as anything. I'm really like holding like on for dear life. What's about to happen is like degrading and the most vicious act that anyone could do to a human being. As they about to do their act, I screamed. I said, don't, because I was like tightening up my body. I said, don't do this. I'm a virgin. And I don't know why I said it. I still don't understand it, but I think I was so scared of how I might feel having someone rape me or even anything that act. I mean, I was a virgin girl. the boss said, "Oh," he stopped them. He said, "Boys, I wanna." He said, "Stop! We have stumbled across a huge cargo," and eventually they stopped. But he had to drag them. But they were like pulling me apart still, and luckily nothing happened on those moments. And he said, "Just put some clothes on her." He said, "We've stumbled across a huge cargo." And I'm thinking to myself, what does this mean? A cargo, I'm a human. I didn't understand it. What they meant with it is that, without spoiling the book too much, they were human trafficking and organ harvesting gang. So if they stumbled across a young and healthy person, they would put them into prostitution, which they probably thought I wasn't a virgin. That's why they wanted to rape me first and then put me into prostitution. Once they're done with the prostitution kind of time life, then they took their organs and made the bodies disappear. So whoever went with them never made it out. So I was told I was the only survivor to have made it out. And they started grooming process with me. So he had a lover there, this girl. I still remember her face as well. And they started the grooming process, which was really unpleasant because I was made to watch all sorts of stuff, all sorts of crazy stuff, acts of insanity, and they were bringing girls and raping them in front of me so I could learn what sexual act is. And
tell me more about that so I can understand that in a bit more detail. They were making you so you've got the boss man, yeah, and you've got his girlfriend is this other girl, and so she's deciding what you have to be exposed to.
No, she was there. She was filming sexual acts with the boss.
She was filming.
She was the girl with the boss. They were having sex.
Yeah.
When I say sex, it's just vile stuff. And my other guys, his troop, I guess they were ex-soldiers because they were all ex-Kosovo soldiers. I was made to watch what they were doing, and that wasn't enough. So they would bring other girls in, which most of the time they were unconscious. And his gang would rape her to show me what's going to happen to me once they sell me, where my life is leading. They were showing me my future. They were showing me what's going to happen. So I had to learn what a girl should be doing to a man and what a man is going to do to a girl. They were grooming me. And everything that I watched was in agony because I was made to watch. A gun was always pointed at me. I was crying my eyes out. I was shouted at. I was smacked around the face. I was pulled around. I had to watch. And it was, I mean, how many times I've been sick, God only knows, because it was something that to watch it live, it was like, oh, vile. And once they were sort of reached that period of time that they thought, okay, she's had enough training, and they had sold me to the highest bidder. Because we lived in this apartment in the center of Kosovo, Pristina, on the 4th floor. It was him and I and her, the girl, his lover, and these young soldiers that were always around him. They would come and go, but us three were always inseparable in the time that I was with them. He would leave sometimes and come back. He would leave me with her and a few soldiers, but I was never left on my own. And it was 3 of us in bed, and it was disgusting. I never got a good night's sleep. It was horrible knowing that you had a woman next to you and then a grown-up man. They're all grown-up people, and I was still in my teens. And I say it this way because the bed was here, the door was there, and I just remember they were always on my left-hand side. I chose the right-hand side, and then...
So you would be in bed and they would be having sex next to you?
Yeah, but I had to watch. So I was always frightened, and I always on tenterhooks because I didn't know what's happening next or what they're going to do next or whether they're going to turn the lights on, whether the gun is going to be pointed at my head. I was exposed to so much stress there and then. My life, from the moment I left home, it was all stress. It's just Peter and Brian were my sort of pit stop of kindness and it's funny how universe has created all this like troubles and then pit stop of kindness and then troubles again. Yeah, they sold me to the highest bidder, and
so then you've got this lover, this man, and then they sell you.
Yeah. So I don't know who bought me. Luckily, I never had a chance to meet them. I touch wood. But on the day that I was supposed to be sent to Albania, because there was a route they were using, and actually European Union I have a picture of that. I'm going to send it to you. You can share it maybe on the podcast, because I have it on my presentation when I'm doing public speaking, motivational speeches. By the European Union, the government have published this visual map of how the people were taken for human trafficking, for sex trafficking, for organ harvesting.
The routes?
Yeah, just the route. It's printed with statistics and everything. I'm going to send it to you so you can add it, just to give you more content. And I use it all the time now because people can actually see it visually that was the route. And that's the route that I talk about.
So you're terrified of what's coming next. You don't know. You just sat in there. Where's your head in that time? Are you're thinking, I'm going to die? You're thinking, what are they going to do to me? What are you, have you resigned yourself to anything in those moments or at that time? Had you just kind of surrendered in your minds to, look, I'm going to die, there's no point fighting it? Or was there something inside of you that was I've got to keep going?
I really believe I've got a fighter spirit because, or maybe life made me, but there was this, my bond, and I don't know how to phrase this, my bond with my parents, the love, the respect that we had for one another. It was important for us to, for example, if I went to school, my mom would know that I'd be at school and back. There was not like me disappearing for hours on end, not knowing where I was. And so this level of my mom needing to know what's happening to me was very important, and my dad. So when I was taken, instead of me worried about like, oh, am I dying or not? It's more like, oh my God, what's my mom going to think when I never show up again in their lifetime? If they've made it through the war and I am here, I'm about to disappear, they're never going to know what's happened to me. I remember that thought repeating on my head till the actual moment I escaped. It was really bizarre. I'm going to phrase it the way I phrased it in my head, and it probably is not going to make sense, but these are my exact thoughts. I don't care if I die or not. Even if I had a choice to go and tell my mom and dad, hey, look, I'm kidnapped by these guys, but soon they're selling me, they sold me or whatever, and they're going to then kill me, take my organs, just so you know what's happening. It's a crazy way of thinking, but my exact thought, and that's never gone away, so sharp. It's about really sending my mom and dad a message or going to see them just to say, Mom and Dad, look, I can't be here, I'm kidnapped, but this is what's happening. That big urge of me wanting to tell them that what's happening to me was very important. Mm-hmm. So they know, even if I wasn't scared of death, I was more scared of them not knowing what happened to me. Them live, potentially thinking either I abandoned them or what happened, the unknown. I couldn't die with myself. Like we say, we couldn't live with myself. I couldn't die and not tell them what had happened. I wanted their message to reach them so badly, what had happened to me. And so in the car towards this point of shipping me to the other countries like Albania, where then from there they were going to send me off to the highest bidder that had won the prize. These are the only thoughts. And then when we approach the border, and I've got guys at the back, so we're sitting at the back, the boss is at the front with the driver, and I'm at the back with guns around me. And at the border, at that particular border, it was Italians like patrolling the area.
Italian UN?
UN Italians, yeah. They go, the border is shut. You need to go back and try another time because we don't know when it's going to open. They shut the border. I'm speaking of luck. It didn't make any sense to me. I thought, just whatever, like it's shut, but it will open in a few hours. I didn't know what was happening. I was very confused. But that night, the boss, before we reached the border, he had to do a pit stop at the nearest kind of city. And he said, boys, leave me, Lurata and I, on our own in this apartment. And I remember the apartment so clearly. And the boys left, and it was just him and I, and he was being really nice. And we walked into the living room. There was a sofa, and then like an armchair. I sat on the armchair, and I was always frightened around him. I don't know, just like so edgy. I didn't know what he's going to do next. And he sat down, he opened a bottle of wine. It must have been his apartment. He got this bottle of wine out, and he said, drink. I said, I don't drink. Oh, I said, come on, relax, just drink. This is all in Albanian, by the way. We're communicating in Albanian. I didn't drink. I said, okay, if you don't drink, come follow me to the bedroom. Now I've gone from being with this other woman and him in the same bed to literally just him and I. And he's being super nice, bizarrely, but creepy. He said, look, if you give yourself to me, meaning if I willingly say, oh, please take my virginity to my kidnapper, he said, I will set you free. You'll be my girl. And then that's it. You'll just be with me. You never go to the highest bidder. And none of what you've been told would happen to you. Such a minefield, such a mind bath. It was like...
a mind fuck, yeah.
Literally. So I don't want to even say the word, but it was such a weird mix of emotions to like, do I save myself? How could I even want to be with him? I had a decision to make. My instant reaction was always no, and it stayed no. But I was still having these debates in my head. What should I be doing? What's the right decision here? Because I did want to make it to my parents. So I can't lie, there was decisions I had to think, well, if I give myself, then maybe I will be allowed to see my mum and dad. Maybe we'll become, I'll become free to go and see them. I laid in bed, he undressed me, and he said, so is it happening? I said, no, I can't do this. I thought if he's going to rape me, it's nothing I can do about it. But I wasn't going to give him that power of, oh yeah, you take my virginity because you so well deserve after tormenting me. Or what you do to other people, or what you've done to the girls in front of me, or what you actually stand for is kidnapping young people and people in general for human trafficking, organ harvesting. How could anyone, no matter how, I'd much rather face death. I thought I was resigned to the fact that, yes, maybe I'm going to die, but I'm not going to give him the pleasure of me giving in, saying yes to him. He was very angry. He pleasured himself against my back, and it was disgusting. And then he then, after a while, he said, just go and wash yourself, you disgust me. And he got very angry suddenly. It's like mood swing changed. I washed myself. I was disgusted. Like literally, that was the first time I'd ever have anything on me that wasn't mine, and that was his pleasure against my back. And I started crying in the bathroom, and I just wanted it to end. I was so disappointed with where I had gotten unintentionally. And then the next day we went to that border. They said, oh, the border is shut. That's when they told us. And then the boss said, boys, we need to turn back where we came from because he didn't anticipate that the border is going to be shut. So I guess he thought, ship me over and then he'll come back and deal with his own chores. But he was still lumbered with me. And I was a big cargo, obviously. And then we drove back, but driving back towards the house, the apartment they were keeping me, every time they stopped, and he had a few pit stops to make. He had meetings, pizzeria, like pizza place, and so many different restaurants. He was just stopping, having these meetings. And they had to bring me in, not leave me in the car. I thought, okay, now this is more like we are in restaurants and stuff. Oh, maybe I should do something. And I would say to the guard, I need to go to the toilet. And just not even talking to me, just pushing me around. And then as we walked towards the toilet, I would always try and reach for the staff or towards the bar or, just towards something, just to make a scene. And then what the guards did, they would grab my hair and just push me around or grab me harsh and like yank me. And I thought, okay, well, at least maybe people can see that I'm in distress here. I'm not here by will. I did my bit. I did all I could do. And that was for me to literally try and just cause a scene. That was my only mission that day, up until we reached the apartment. And when we reached the apartment, I remember it exactly. It was midnight because it was the clock on the hallway was there. And the boss was standing and I was facing him. And everybody was around us, and he had a call, and he got really angry on the call. And when he came off the phone of this call, he said to his boys, like, boys, we've got to go. She's more trouble than she's worth it. He took one of his team members. He said, you rape her, you kill her. I don't care. Just do what we do with the bodies. He said, I'm out of here. Took every belonging. They disappeared. So now I'm with this guy that was serving him. And now I've gone from, I have time, throw a fast in restaurants, try to raise awareness that I'm in distress, to literally, this is happening. He has a gun and I'm about to die. I genuinely had no intention of escaping that night. I was so scared of dying, not that I knew death is there. It felt like death. I felt so cold, and the life flashed in front of my eyes. Like they say, it really does flashes in front of your eyes. It was like I was going back in time and thinking of my childhood, and just almost like being grateful for everything that I had. And I didn't realize it was going to turn up this way for me to die. And I said to the guy in Albania, I said, look, as you know, I'm a virgin. I'm so scared. You're going to rape me. I'm really scared. So just please do it nicely. Do it nicely, everything, because I'm really frightened. And I said, I need to pray. Sorry. God, it's still so painful. You know, you go through life and you just become better at handling what's happened to you, but you never fully heal. I don't think I've healed fully. I've just become kind and want to make a difference in the world. But these kind of memories, I relive them in my dream. And when I talk about them, I relive them. But I just want to demonstrate to people it's okay to be vulnerable, because it's something that shaped us, that made us, and hopefully we've learned from it. So forgive me if I'm crying. It's quite emotional time that night. And the guy said, okay, fine, you pray. And I think God sent him my way. He was young, naive, and easily to manipulate, I guess. And I didn't even know I was manipulating, but I genuinely just wanted to pray. And he went to wash himself, and he said, I'm going to pray too. He said, because I think I probably was to be his first kill. And I'm laying there next to, if the TV was to be here, and the sofa here, and the table here, in this little corner as I walk into the room, that's where I was praying. And I went onto, like, you live in Dubai and we pray on the ground. I'm still Muslim at heart. I still believe in God. I don't pray 5 times a day like my parents, but I still do my bit. So I went onto sajda and I put my head down, and I wasn't praying in a regular manner. I was just there with my head down the whole time, saying, please forgive me, I let you down, dear God. You know, I don't think I was meant to go this way, but it's done. And I was praying so my mom and dad can have some kind of closure or message that I'm dead rather than just disappeared off the face of the earth. I don't even know how we're going to do it on a documentary, because magic happened. And you can't film magic. It's just, you feel it, but you can't film it. As I'm down there praying, this guy that went to the toilet that was left with me, and this is like seconds, minutes, but it seemed like a lifetime for me. He dropped something on his glass table and he leaves it. He doesn't drop it, he leaves it, but he makes such a clicking noise and banging noise that I didn't want to raise my hand because I was praying, and you don't break your prayer by noise or by anything. We are like glued to it.
Understood.
But something made me look, so as if God itself wanted me to look. So I apologized and I looked. And when I looked, I saw the gun and I saw the keys. And now I'm left with the thought, like, do I continue the prayer? Do I try to take the keys? What's the message here? Dear God, dear universe. Obviously in my heart, in my gut feeling, and that's why my gut feeling is so strong now. I learned to channel it. It told me to grab the keys, run. So I grabbed the keys, frightened, I was shaking. I went to the door, and there was 2 doors. One was wooden door from the inside, and the other door was a metal door, like a prison door with rails. I opened the wooden door, and this guy that is washing himself, he's not hearing me at that point. When I started opening the metal door, because it's a metal door, it makes noise, and I don't know which way it opens up. I thought it opens like a normal door, and it opens the opposite way. I was fiddling so much with the keys He started swearing. He knew it was me, but it was his mistake to leave the keys. So I didn't touch the gun. I started running down the stairs, but very quickly after that, he was right behind me. So I could hear his footstep, and the shouting and the screaming I can hear. And when I reached the main door of this building, he punched me so hard, I went flying onto the main road. This again was after midnight, luckily very quiet on the roads. But that punching and that throw onto my back onto the road, as I turned onto my stomach just to orientate myself, I saw these flashing lights of the back of the car when the car, stops.
Brake lights.
The brake lights. I thought, and let me have a look. I thought, oh, there is life. And I started screaming. I didn't know it was a police officer, but the more I focused and I dragged myself towards it, I could see it's a police officer car, which again happened to be an Italian police officer with the United Nations. And the guy now is shooting. The police officer, I realize, is shooting. So they're shooting at each other. And I'm crawling on the road towards the police officer. And the police officer actually risked himself a little bit. He came towards me while he's shooting just to grab me. And he yanked me. He pulled me all the way where the car is parked, the Jeep. Pulled the door open, reached out for this walkie-talkie thing, and he called all units. That's all I sort of remember. And the next thing I know, it was, I don't know how many units were there, loads, all sorts of different nations, Germans, everyone was there. And they had translators with them. They're all trying to talk to me at once. I'm just saying, it's up there, 4th floor, you'll find evidence. I don't know what they found. And they just grabbed me and put me in a truck, and they drove me to the next police station where I had to give an interview to the local police in Albanian to say what has happened, my experience, and who are these people. Luck had it that they never really hid their names from me, so I learned all the names. I can't make these names up. I mean, I'm sitting there giving all this evidence, and one police officer started crying, which was my dad's age. And I'm looking at him. He said, "Could I hug you?" I said, "No, don't touch me." He said, "I want to hug you because you are the only survivor that's ever survived them, and we've been wanting to bring them down and send them to Hague." I said, "No, that you've got the evidence, leave me alone." And I said, "Well, okay, it's 3 a.m. in the morning now. Where do we take you?" I said, "I've got Peter and Brian that I've been staying with. Maybe if you can reunite me with them so I can say goodbye." And then, so they called Peter and Brian. I got reunited with them. We said our goodbyes the next day. And the same journey that I took in to Kosovo, I took back into Serbia.
So hold on, you're going to stay with Peter and Brian for the night?
Just for the night.
They're obviously delighted that you're back, and such relief to know that you're safe.
Yeah.
So your guardian angels are at least some of their pain must have been eased in that moment, because they didn't know what had happened to you, and they must have been terrified for you.
They were very disappointed when they learned from this, like from their colleagues, what had happened with my interview. They were devastated, absolutely devastated.
So that they ask you some questions, and then you go to Peter And the next day, you're then put on transport back to Serbia.
Yeah, I requested to get onto a bus that takes me as near to the place that I came from.
So you could go to mum and dad?
Yeah, so I can cross illegally again because the borders were shut still.
Yeah.
So I found the spot where I came from, and then I tried to follow those footsteps. Well, there was no footsteps, but, you know, it's a figure of speech.
Yeah.
And
general direction, basically, yeah.
Yeah, same direction. But this time I was thinking when I get there, it's probably all flat. It's been bombed and, you know, they're going to be probably all dead. I'm going to be the only survivor, and these kind of thoughts in my head. It was this anticipation. And when I got to our town, there was lots of smoke going on from different directions. It was quiet, nobody about. It was like a ghost town, as I describe it as. And I still sheepishly went in. There was loads of mines everywhere that mined the whole place. Luckily, I didn't step on it. And then I walk into my mum and dad's garden, still quiet. I go up the stairs into their living room and look, there's no one there. And my parents don't really spend much time in the basement, so I was thinking I'll check the basement. But so I went on the into the basement, and they were there hiding. And my mum started like being hysterical and crying and screaming like, "Why did you come back?" All I wanted to do is say, "Mum, you don't understand. I've daydreamed of this moment to tell you that it's what has happened to me. You know, this is what I wanted to tell her, but I didn't have time." I said, "Mum, I've got so much to tell you." She's like, "No, you shouldn't have come back. Oh my God, they're going to kill you, da da da." And my dad is trying to calm her down. And the next thing we know, in the garden, and we've got a huge garden, there was this army truck that had pulled in, and they came, these army guys. And I have to say this one, during the war, we had two different armies. One was the real army, and the other army was like created during the war. They were trainers, like a
militia.
Non-military. They were created, they were recruits from prisons, from the rapists, the killers.
Yeah.
So just to make the numbers up. And it was those guys that came and took me away. But we didn't understand what they were capable of until they took me. And so I said to my mum and dad, as they are on the ground crying in the middle of the garden, I said, "At least, you know, I'm with them, you know." And I'm thinking to myself, what's the big deal? At least now, I think I'd gone through so much, I thought, that now my parents can see what's happening. I didn't have that responsibility of telling them that what's happening. They can see what's happening. I'm being taken by our own military. And I thought, it's fine. It's fine. I'm going to tell them the truth. And what's the worst that could happen? And I remember leading them in the garden crying, and I'm in this drive between two big army guys. One is driving, one is just next to me. And I'm just thinking, oh, I'm so relieved I'm back in my own land, even though I don't know what's going to happen next. So these guys took me into this, not far from my house, actually, into this mountain, but there was a building, which was a bit confusing for me because we had military base, which it was quite nearby. Mm. And there was a guy that was waiting, a different guy, and they interrogated me. So they were questioning me. Why did I cross borders? Who was I serving? Are you a spy? I'm like, no, I'm not a spy at all. I'm just telling them because you guys tried to massacre us and kill us and all of this, I ended up there. Now there I got kidnapped. I'm here. So literally like I'm telling you the story. They were like, "We don't believe you." So they started beating me up. When they started beating me up, it's a force that as a child or as a human you don't experience until you've been punched. So they dislocated my jaw. I remember pain, but then I've been diagnosed all in the UK. My nose was broken, dislocated jaw, teeth missing.
So they were punching you in the face?
Oh, yeah.
And kicking you in the face, like a proper beat it up?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I still have teeth missing. My nose had to be fixed. I mean, my nose aesthetically has been fixed, but it's not done like a doll nose because the hospital here, they just wanted so I can breathe. I had such a broken nose. They wanted me to be able to breathe through my nose, so they just fixed my nose. So if people were to watch me now, analyze me, they can see that my nose is fiddled with.
This is the first time you've been beaten up properly.
Properly. like full on beating, and it gets worse. They ripped my ear. So this ear, it's been fixed by cosmetic surgeons because it was infected from the rip that I had, and so I lost part of the earring. So there had to be, it's like almost like a plastic kind of flap. It's not really, but it doesn't have flexibility.
Sure.
And so I had to be fixed just so I can look a bit more normal. And they, during the time when they were throwing me around, they yanked my back so much. So I have these slip discs on my lumbar spine, which almost paralyzed me. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I will never forget, and I don't wish it upon anyone, was the branding. They branded me with a cattle brander. That they used to brand the cattle. I don't know if they still do them. But it was like a hashtag shape, and on my calf, they heated up so much.
On the back of your leg?
Yeah, back on my leg. I had the laser removed. Yeah, it was horrific. They pinned me down on the floor. I was obviously swollen and I was bleeding through every angle. And I was on the floor and they were holding my legs. And when I could feel the heat approaching on my calf, and then all of a sudden, the pain was so big that I blacked out. That I don't know until I wake up the next time. And so, Spencer, this is quite of a molding time what I'm about to tell you. I don't know if you had time to read the book, but when I woke up, I was in a very small dark room. I thought I was buried alive. My room was so tiny. I'm 5'7". So when I stood up, I could feel the ceiling just above my head. When I lie down flat, my feet would almost touch the other wall. And this way, weight-wise, I can touch it, because when they used to put rat and mice in my room to torment me, I would almost crawl up the wall and with my feet up in each wall just to stay away from the floor, because of the rat and mice move so fast. I have a huge phobia, which I've been working on now, but all these things. But when I woke up that after blacking out, I realized I was in a dark room. I couldn't see anything. There was no window. It was just a room, the door where you could see, the door, the light shining from the corridor. Mm-hmm. And I was very disorientated because I couldn't see properly. My eyes were swollen from being beaten up. I had this excruciating pain on my calf. I was in a lot of pain, and I became frantic. I started panicking because I thought I was suffocating. It was really dark. It was tight. And that was, psychologically, that moment was really hard to process, because I scratched the doors. I banged the doors. I was hitting the walls. I wanted to get out. It was that claustrophobia kicking in of, I need to get out. I couldn't breathe. And so I kept fainting. I kept drifting off and coming back, drifting off, until eventually, I don't know how long it took, but I stabilized myself. I realized it wasn't changing. I was there. And I had to just accept it. I was buried alive, literally, in this dark room. And I thought, okay, well, what am I going to do? Just waiting for things to change. And then as the minutes and minutes time went on, the soldiers came in and they started to rape me. And when that started happening, I pretty much wanted to die. There's something I'd feared in Kosovo, and I managed to escape to literally coming straight into in a situation where I was being raped daily by different soldiers. And
more than once
a day.
I was 6 months with them. I was 6 months in that dark room.
So you were raped every day, more than once a day for 6 months?
Yeah, by the soldiers. But that became sort of, physically you start handing things. When I was being left with that huge disappointment, and my dignity got taken away, my innocence, everything. And I would just, stay there and sing, trying to think of something that would just give me hope for life. And I would just sing to myself, anything that I just to myself, and think of my mom's cooking and all my childhood, the way it was so beautiful, and longing for my mom's hug and my dad's wisdom. And these kind of things, I think it's what kept me going, that we take for granted sometimes in life. The people we love, or the people that are there for us, and people that motivate us or inspire us. I then just, I gave in to the darkness. I didn't want to eat the food that were providing these like disgusting watery soups. And I lost a lot of weight quite drastically. I became unwell. I was infected on my ear, my calf. I was really, really unwell, and they were still raping me. That became my bathroom, that room. It became everything in that space. It was just all I knew. And I was treated like a monster. And when they would come towards sort of middle and the end of my experience, I gained this level of mind switch of, I turned the tables. Feeling sorry for me, it wasn't really serving me. And I wasn't dying, no matter how much I starved myself. So I thought, okay, well, that's not working. Now what's working? Singing is working. Thinking of my mom is working. And then I remember this particular moment when I realized that you can switch things off. You're in control. When they were raping me, instead of me resisting, screaming and crying like I was doing, I was like, I gave in, staring into the darkness. I started thinking of the songs, my mom's cooking, my childhood, playing with my cousins. And what I know is meditation. It's what I was doing then. I didn't know. Meditation didn't exist in my time then. So I clearly was switching off my thoughts, my emotions from the physical experience to the mental ability. And it's very powerful when you can switch that off. And what then I started thinking, there's something that prompted me to think. And I analyze every human being I meet. This is how I will meet everybody. Whether it's just after I've spoken on stage or in the day-to-day, on the bus, on the tube, you name it. If I met you, I will always first see you as a child. I will meet you in a child's form. Why? Because I truly believe as children, we are born so innocent and so pure, and we are just longing for information and guidance. And there is no one child that is born that wants to kill somebody. It's all because we are made of love, hopefully. And I believe love, what we know of, intercourse with stuff. But so we are love. And when we are born, we are pure. And so when I meet you, I will see you as a child, because I will give you the benefit of the doubt that you were born as pure. And then I will start learning about how life has shaped you. So therefore, it doesn't give me room to judge you. So for me, in my eyes, you will always be that pure child. And how you treat me, it will show me that how you've been treated yourself, or how you've been shaped. So I won't take it personally. So whether somebody gives me a heartbreak or is nasty to me, I will always see that as a level of what you've been exposed rather than what I deserve, because I know I come in peace and I come to do good. And so that's allowed me to help people see beyond. Because if I recognize that someone is actually, he's never been explained this method, then I will show them the method. So I share my story and I share this particular moment. And then they potentially start seeing like, oh, this has happened to me. And then you start seeing why they've become the way they have. Yeah. So I started seeing those men that were raping me. I was thinking in my head, and I remember it like today, say, oh my God, they don't know what they're doing. What happened to this kid?
So you started feeling sorry
for them,
for the rapists,
for the rapist child.
Their childhood, and as children. Yeah, they didn't mean to be like this. They're innocent kids that have been corrupted along the way.
That's how my mind was working at that point, and that's how my mind has remained to work.
And so then when you went into that headspace, did you stop feeling like a victim in that time? Yes. And start feeling like they were victims of something?
Exactly. So
wow, that's a really powerful way to turn things around, isn't it?
I saw them as people that have been victimized, they're victims of some kind of abuse, which it wasn't their fault. And I saw myself as the forgiver. So in a sense, I became part of the greatest good in the universe, and I forgave them for what they were doing to me.
And so then if you were there for 6 months, how far into that journey do you think that mindset shifted for you?
I don't know the time frame, but I think halfway through. Initially, I was just fighting it. So halfway through, I thought, I didn't even think, I need to change my mindset. It just happened so organically because I tried to kill myself. I tried to starve myself. I tried everything. It wasn't changing. What I realized that I wanted to feel good just for the sake of, because I knew I was living in this hole. It was painful anyway. But then you have a choice. Do you live in pain or you try to make it slightly easier? And what was making it easier for me is thinking of my mum's cooking and stuff. And I think partly came from things that maybe I was reflecting as a child, whereas my mum and dad, when I done something, they would forgive me. My mum always used to say, oh, Mum, you're going to tell me off, because of what my cousins told them. The mums were always telling them off. And she always said to me, I will never tell you off once it's done. What's the point? She said, my job is to explain it to you before it's done. I should have explained things to you. So
I want to get to the lessons.
To the lessons.
To the lessons that you've learned and that you can teach, and we'll get to that shortly. But just take me back to this place where, because the horrors, just in my interpretation of what's happening, and all I do is I suppose because the way that I learn and remember is by creating pictures in my own mind. And so every step that you've told me, I'm just creating that picture for myself. So you've got this really painful experience that even though the physical experience doesn't change, the way that you've decided to frame it in your mind, consciously, subconsciously, the way it's become framed has at least made it more bearable for you. How did it end?
There and then.
How did that 6 months come to an end? What was the reason it stopped? Why did they stop it?
Well, this is not really a lesson as such.
No, I don't want a lesson here.
Yeah.
I'd like a lesson later. But what I'd like to know is, how did that come to an end?
So what had happened is in what I don't really fully got detailed in the book, because my intention was to publish the second book. But then the first book taught me how hard it is. So I'm just taking my time. I'm tired. No, I'm just taking my time because timing is everything, I noticed. And I've learned through life experiences. So in the background, my dad had gone high and low to locate me. So I had my dad on my side this time round. He was searching for me for 6 months. He was trying his best to find me. Now, he had spoken to someone he knew in the police force at that time. Because as you remember, my dad was serving, as a doctor, he was healing everyone, treating everyone. And he spoke to someone he knew in the police force, and he said, look, my daughter has been taken by the army. Could you guys help me locate her, because wife is going so crazy. I know it's war, we're dying anyway, but I want to know where my daughter is. What has she done? Why is she being held? It's 6 months. Is she dead? And the police officer said, look, I really don't know anything, but I am willing to go and speak to the army on your behalf. And he was a Serbian police officer, not Albanian speaking, but actually Serbian, my dad's friend. So the police officer approached the regular army, the legit army, and he had a word with them. He said, look, I know it's war, but there's a kid missing. She's in her teens. If she's dead, at least tell me so I can tell their family so they stop searching. It's not fair, You might as well just, he said, it's nothing to do with us. And the police officer said, well, what do you mean there's nothing to do with you? It was an army truck that collected her. He said, look, we are not supposed to get involved. It's not our doing. We would never do this. We are legit. We are army. Yes, we are being asked to kill and bomb, but we will not take an underage child, like 17, 18. We would not do stuff like this. We have children. So the police officer was very confused, and he said, well, he insisted the truth. He said, I will tell you, but I can't interfere. So I'm going to tell you and then you do your bit. He said, we've had word that the illegal army that was formed in Serbia from prisons, the rapists and the killers that will put on uniform as trainers, they have her. And the police officer said to him, but they have her 100% or you think they have her? He said, no, she's still alive. She's there because we hear the stories. So I think they were going around telling how they raping me and stuff. And the police officer said, okay, well, do you know how we could get her out? We're not going to get involved, but the dad can try and take some money in and see if they release her maybe, or bribe her out for a bit, and then escape, make her escape. She can't go back. If she escapes, she needs to disappear. So the police officer came to my dad's house and he said, look, I'm not supposed to be here, but we have located your daughter. I can take you to the location. Have you got any money? My dad said, I don't have anything. Doctor. He said, well, find some money. And my dad had to go and ask all the relatives that lived in town that he still had, his cousins, to gather some money. So all the elderly knew why he was gathering the money. All my generation still don't know what happened to me. They're just learning slowly what I was going through at that time. And my dad gathered some money, and the police officer brought him to where I was being held. I don't know this was happening. I got told this after. And next thing I know, so when I was in my room in the dark, just there like singing to myself, and the door opens up and one of the soldiers, he said, come on, somebody's here to see you. You know how many times they did that to me? Just to torment me, lying to me? Oh, many times. And then I would come out and they'd beat me up and then put me back in. So this time I didn't believe them. I said, no. He said, no, really, come. Somebody's here to see you. I still didn't believe it. I was waiting for the hitting and I thought, what's the worst that could happen? I stood up slowly, skin and bones, and shuffled my way into the corridors and into this room where they interrogated me. I got back into that room for the first time since the interrogation. And when I walked in, my dad was there for real. I couldn't believe my eyesight. But what I don't forget ever, as a doctor, my dad, his face when he saw me, I was completely deformed. I was skin and bone, and I could just see, his face dropping and just his chin like shaking, because I think he was ready to cry his eyes out what he saw, their own child. So sorry for my dad. It must have been really tough for them, because I have kids. Somebody just thinks of hurting your kid, you want to destroy them. What he must have felt as a human being to see me like that must have been, you wonder he's got 2 heart attacks under his belt, So he took me. I hugged him and I said, Dad, what took you so long? That's all I wanted to say to him, because I didn't know what else to say. It's almost like I blamed him for not getting me sooner. And they said, stop you guys talking in Albanian, speak in Serbian, because we were talking in Albanian because they don't understand. And anyway, minor details, but my dad took me slowly out. I didn't know there was bribing going on. I didn't know he had bribed me for cash. I didn't know what was going on. I just clinged on to my dad for dear life. I couldn't believe I was walking into this door that would set me to freedom. I didn't know what was happening. When we got out, it was daytime and it was so bright, Spencer. When you've been held in a dark room, when I say dark, it's like pitch black, like the table, like pitch black. And you go into natural sunlight or any light, it's blinding. 6 months of darkness to literally light. Artificial light doesn't do it justice, because I was on the artificial light sometimes when they would take me out into the bathrooms and wash me with jet washer. All the details in the book. But the real sunlight, the real light was something intense. And I just remember covering my eyes, and my dad didn't realize where I was being housed. So he put this blanket over me and put me at the back of the car, and I lied down. And I just remember hearing my breath for the first time and this sense of relief, but I didn't know what was happening. And I remember asking my dad, is mum dead? Because I thought maybe my mum died. Maybe that's why I'm being released. He was like, no, your mum is at home. Come on. So we drove for a bit, like 15, 20 minutes, not long. We got home and my mum was waiting there for me. She'd cook some stuff. Straight into the bathroom. I must have stunk. I was rotting away. My mum washed me and my dad got all of his medical tools out, stitching me, cutting things, numbing me with injections, treating my wounds, looking at my ear, treating my ear. I mean, I was like in a medical center with him. Like he had to treat everything, the scar on my calf. I was so tired, and I remember I said, Nanny, I said, I just want to lie down. I lied next to her, and I fell asleep on her lap. And hand on heart, if they didn't wake me up, I probably would have died, I think. I was ready. It was a good way to go. It was such a peaceful moment on my mum's lap, my dad's there. And they started talking like they were whispering something, and that woke me up. And I said, what is going on? What's the whisper? What's happening, Because my dad said, I've bribed you out for 24 hours. And I knew that they had to do what they had to do in 24 hours, get me ready to stitch me up and send me back. So I was prepared to go back. I knew I was going back. There was no way, because otherwise they would kill my mum and dad. And my dad said, oh, no. You haven't been asleep long, but it's nighttime now. And I'm thinking, yeah. He said, we need to go. I said, where? He said, it's the last time you ever have to do anything like this. I said, Dad, not again, please. I'm tired. I give up. I'm dead. I'm done. I just want to die. I'm tired. I was protesting. My mom started crying. She said, please just do this for last time for us. Please, we beg of you. Oh, I said, Mom, but I'm tired. I'm so tired of this. Running for my life the whole time. And I said, okay, I'll do this for the last time. But I didn't know what I was doing or where I was going or what was ahead of me. I had no idea. I just said yes to anything my dad said because I knew I was dying. I felt death. I was tired. And I hugged my mom. He said, hug her because this is the last time you see us. This is a real goodbye. So this is the last goodbye. And that was hard for me to hear because I was emotionally drained. And I thought if I was dying, then okay, let it be the last goodbye. But I was going somewhere where I was going. And I said goodbye to my mom, hugged her deeply. And I just sniffed her for the last time. And I feel like that smell will always be with me. And I said, I love you guys so much, but you don't have to do this. I'm tired. I need to die. I need to go. I'm tired. My dad said, no, you don't understand. You have a long life ahead of you. You got to listen to us. I couldn't see what my dad was seeing. He walked me slowly all the way, that road that I mentioned earlier that was on sort of farmer's road, all the way into this like, not motorway, but like a main road. But trucks would go, still import, export was still happening, even during the war. And we didn't really say much. We reached this truck. There was a truck waiting for me, massive truck. And I opened the door and I looked, there's a man in there. And I'm thinking, in my heart, just like, my heart sank. I was like, not again. I had no time to tell my parents what had happened to me and the sexual abuse and stuff. There was no way to check for my dad. He's too close to home. He wasn't a gynecologist. He's my dad. So a lot was going through my mind that I hadn't dealt with yet. And to go with another man, it was like suicidal for me. He said, listen, the driver doesn't speak our language. He's got it all written, what he needs to do. He's been paid money. He's taking you far away. And hug me and say goodbye, because this is our last goodbye. Oh my God. And just saying my last goodbye to my dad, it was really tough, Spencer. And I said goodbye, I got in this truck. And I looked at my dad and I was like, oh my God. As we pulled off, I looked at him in this like side mirror. And what can I do? The driver is there. He's driving me. And I'm thinking, where is he taking me? Who is he? And we didn't speak because I couldn't speak other languages, just Serbian and Albanian. That was my journey, a journey that took me through different places, which I don't know where we stopped, what we did. I just remember stopping for toilets, him getting me food, and that's about it. But it was a long journey with him, quite long, through different countries. I was smuggled into the truck. And then the last thing before my freedom, I got granted freedom in the UK, was when I was tied into the truck, hidden. I remember going into a ferry because of the way it wobbled. So I guess it was the Calais and Dover crossing. And when we reached Dover, I remember the driver driving for a while and then stopping somewhere. And in fact, I had to go back to that spot a few years ago. He put in the truck, there was lots of curtains that you pull in. There's a big truck. And there was two beds. So the one bed at the bottom, the driver's seat, and then another seat, and then the bed at the bottom, and then one at the top. The bed at the top folds like a sausage. Mm-hmm. You can roll it. I didn't know this, but that's where I was hidden the whole time. And that was my bed when we took a sleep. So I slept with a driver in the same cabin together. Yeah, he was at the bottom, I was at the top. And when we reached the UK, Dover, he obviously was hiding me in that sausage bed. And he pulled all the curtains up. I got down, he pulled the curtains up. And first thing that was said to me when I reached the land of freedom, so it's for me and I'm very grateful. He said, "Welcome to England." And I just went to myself like, I was in Serbia a week ago or whatever, however long it took, and I'm in England. What am I going to do here? I don't even speak the language. Where am I going? And he called someone on the phone, spoke in English, and they decided to meet on the south of M25 mm-hmm. at a petrol station, at the service station. And they met with this man. But it looked awfully familiar when I saw him. He was my mum's cousin. He had escaped. He took the last flight from Bosnia. He was studying in Bosnia as a psychiatrist. He took the last flight from Bosnia before it all shut down, like we were shut down south. And that plane that he took, he didn't have a choice. It landed in the UK, so he was a political asylum seeker himself. But much earlier than me, like a decade or so earlier, because he was from Bosnia region. And he was already practicing. He was a psychiatrist at one of the most prestigious hospitals in the UK. So it was him. And he looked exactly like my mom's family, the uncles and stuff. He looked so familiar. I hugged him. He couldn't believe what he saw. I was still deformed and stuff. And he was so welcoming. And he hugged me, said, "Are you okay? And so nice to meet you." And it was like a feeling of high, and then I got depressed straight away because I realized that it was happening. It wasn't a dream. This is really, I was far away from everything, and I didn't know if my mom and dad would live. So he took me under his wing for a certain time until the government took over and gave me a second chance in life. So thanks to the British government, and I always say this, thanks to the UK taxpayers for paying their taxes, which ultimately some of it gets invested in people like myself. And you all gave me a second chance in life. So, yeah. It's
not just that there. It demonstrates that that we should be less judgmental of these people that are fighting to get into this country, because you never know what their story is. No. And as your story was, that's a great example to us. And so, how long have you lived in the UK for?
25 years or so.
25
Minus 5 years in Asia, in Singapore. Okay. I had the pleasure of living there for 5 years.
And I mean, wow.
Are you okay? It's rare to see you speechless, Spencer. May I say that?
You moved me. You moved me the first time I met you, and you moved me right now. And I feel, or every emotion that I could have possibly felt, I just felt. I felt angry. I felt sad. I felt grateful. I felt pity. I felt loss, and I felt hope. And a journey. I mean, when you talk about your dad and the relationship you have with him and what he must have been going through, obviously, you know, here in the studio, one of my daughters is here right now.
I know.
And it just, I wouldn't even know. I have no idea how he coped. What he must have seen when he saw you, and how awful he must have felt because you're his baby. Yeah. And how he would have felt so incredibly guilty. Yeah. And then to have to get you out of the country to give you a future, so incredibly selfless.
I know.
So, as much as you didn't think about it at the time, but when you look back and I hear that story, how selfless a man who has felt so much guilt and so much shame because of what you've just been through, yet his only way is to get you to safety, into and knowing that he may never see you again. Oh. Wow.
I have kids, and I always say to them, when I tell them I love you, specifically the older one always goes, I love you more. I said, darling, I have you. I understand the parent love now. I'm so thankful and grateful to universe for gifting me these children, especially boys, because I was so broken by male gender, and I absolutely have so much respect for male gender with all meaning of the word, because as I mentioned earlier to you, my mentor, Gilles, my husband, my dad, my boys, my father-in-law. There's so many people, you know, so you can't go through life basing it on gender or anything. But having boys, I didn't realize how important it was for my healing process to be able to have this unconditional love.
Yeah, God has definitely brought you two boys. For really, I think very clear reasons, aren't they?
Yeah.
I don't think that's got anything to do with genetics. I think that's all to do with somebody wanting you to find a way of healing in the best way you can.
Yeah. So I'm really grateful for that.
I mean, I could end this interview right now, and that's enough. But
is it enough?
But what for me, I want to do for the benefit of everybody right now is really talk about lessons and what this has enabled you to go on and do, and the difference that you're now having on other people's lives, because I think it's really important to share that. Now, again, you have every right, or had every right, to wave the white flag and surrender to life. After what you've been through, you're forgiven. You know, the world forgives you after what you've been through. You have every right to hate. You have every right to resent. You have every right to be angry. You have every right for all of those things. And to blame the world for what happened to you, you've got every right for that. And I talk about people having choices. You have choices. you get up every day and you've got choices to make, but you weren't given choices. Yeah, you weren't. But you decided to turn telling your story into a way of inspiring people and motivating people. Tell me why you decided to do that.
It was never intentional. So I found a few. It's funny because until you start meeting people and people that can guide you, you sort of find your own way. So when I came to the UK and I literally had a choice to be under the government support for the rest of my life and a suicidal watch for the rest of my life, or potentially really not think about suicide and stop being silly because you didn't go through that just to commit suicide. It was such a disappointment for my dad to even know that I had those thoughts, but I couldn't help it. I had a choice to learn. I was given a choice to learn. And the choice I was given is to go to Hammersmith and West College near Barron's Court. That's how it used to be called. And I had the choice to learn a language, study computer, and do acting. I was offered acting.
So,
yeah,
just talk to me about that again. So we talk about choices, and it's like, I have this big issue, with people. I'm like, you wake up every day and you got a choice to make. You can choose to be unhappy. You can choose to be sad. You can choose to be lazy. You can choose to go to the gym. You can choose. You didn't choose. You never had choices. You were forced.
Yeah.
And when you think about that kind of like, you don't get choices. What do you do now that can help people understand or the strength that people have to take away from what you've been through?
What do I do now? Well, I approach everything in a holistic way. So whether being in a corporate world or being in a fitness industry, I think approaching everything holistically is the way forward, in order to see change. So, there's different things that I do, but I do focus on understanding every individual that I work with or I train or coach or whatever in a level that allows them to make those choices themselves rather than me telling them what to do. I focus on just building the confidence and most of all, understanding the value they possess, the authority they possess, the choices that they have. When I share a story, I just always hope that I could save one life. When I used to say, if I could just share a story to save one life, my job is done. And that was mostly dedicated to people that have been through human trafficking or kidnapped, because I never thought any other person would be able to relate to my pain or my struggles. And then I get a huge surprise from the audience in Singapore where I did a talk for UN women. And I had queues after my talk, people waiting, because I said, you need to speak out. You have a voice, you have a choice. So, it was a whole shebang I was talking about. I had people queuing and saying, I want you to be the first person that I've told this. Or if you can beat that, I could beat cancer. And I wasn't prepared for the feedback I was getting because I genuinely never thought what happened to me is remotely significant enough to anyone's day-to-day. I just thought it's dedicated mostly to people that have been through that kind of trauma. And then hopefully I will say that you can make it too, you could heal, you could do, because I took such healing process to get to where I am. I didn't just come to the UK and become initially a personal trainer and then become a nutritionist and become all of these diplomas that I have and then become a public speaking coach or, all of the stuff that I do. It took stages.
Of course.
Yeah, and it took a mentor to actually see my future before I did. It was Gilles' idea for me to write a book. And the reason for that was, I was speaking to Gilles. I said, Gilles, look, I have this huge injury on my lower back. I can no longer train people. I'm getting paralyzed. He said, why have you got that injury? Because he didn't know my story. I sat him down at the coffee shop in Elscourt in London, and I'm telling him my story, and he's looking for the first time. I decided to trust somebody. And he said, Lurata, oh my God. He said, don't worry. Even if you lose your legs, there's so much you can do. You can still work. You can still help people. I'm like, Gilles, what are you going on about? If I can't do personal training, how am I going to help people? This is all I know. Because I came into personal training world with a different perspective.
Hold on a minute. When you came here 25 years ago,
Yeah.
how long did it take you to tell your story?
Decades.
So you didn't tell that story.
Only the government knew. The doctors and the government.
The government here.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But you didn't tell your story openly.
No.
Until how long ago?
I only just started in Singapore.
Which was when?
2015.
Okay, so 7 or 8 years ago, or 9 years this year, was you telling your story?
Yeah, publicly. This is how much shame I felt and so much degrade I felt and how horrible I felt about what happened to me because my own people did that to me. So for me to go and speak about it, I was ashamed. And most victims that I speak to being raped, abused, or whatever it might be, male, gender, female, whoever, they always say, I don't speak out about this because I'm afraid and I'm ashamed, embarrassed to tell people.
Okay, there's two things that really resonate with me from this. This, I can't even call it a story, this horror. So two things that really resonate with me. Number one, okay, that's really pinging in my head at the moment is how you reframed halfway through being raped and tortured every day, how you reframed the picture that you were seeing. That really, it's like that's almost divine of that being able to happen to you, to be able as a coping mechanism to work. And I think there's a lot there that really resonates with me. But also what resonates with me is like, it doesn't matter, because you're the example of this. It doesn't matter what you've been through. No matter how tough, okay, there is always hope. And you can get through.
Yeah.
And there is something on the other side of the light.
Always.
And I don't know a story, and I've had some incredible stories of people's journeys on this show over the last 7 years. And I don't know one that leans into that more. Mm. You annoy me.
Please.
Because this should have been shared a long time ago. And because there's so much hope in this. People all have their own types of trauma in different ways. I'm just sorry for everyone that's listening to this in the car right now. I'm just trying to give this some perspective from me, but people process things in different ways. But it makes me feel like if I ever have a problem or I ever have an issue, I've only got to think about you. Because if I think about you, then it's almost like a Spencer looking in the mirror moment and going, shut the fuck up, Spencer. What are you whinging about? Do you know what I mean by that?
I know, Spencer. There's a lot of points that I can see your perspective, but this is what I have to say. And just to sum it up. One, you said, I should have told the story sooner. Yes. I don't know if it would have been impactful as it is now because I was not healed yet. So
fair enough.
I believe people, it's never too late, right? So I believe nothing comes too soon or too late. It will all align at the right time. This is what I've learned. But you're going to have to want it. I could have stayed there and hibernated and kept it to myself. Such a treasure to die with, potentially saving people's lives, which honestly, the messages I get, like you just saved me from suicide. Imagine getting messages like that. I'm just like often sit down and I cry because I'm like, oh my God, I feel such a sense of responsibility to continue to tell this story. Not because I want people to feel sorry for me. I want them to find lessons from it. I want them to then go and analyze their experience and say, okay, Lurata learned this from experience. What is it teaching me, my experience? How can I implement this? How can I be kinder? How can I create allies rather than the enemies? How could she create allies rather than the enemies? I want people to go away and think in business, in life, not to wait until something happens like happened to me, because it might not never happen. But if you can get some nuggets from this story and say, hang on a minute, I'm having a bit of misunderstanding here at home, in the office, what she would do in the situation, what I could do that it will align me with her sense of belief and how to deal with conflict or difficulty, that kind of stuff. But also, nothing will ever be sent to us that we can't handle. And the pain that you and I maybe have experienced, even just you and I here, for example, your pain threshold is different, mine is different. So we can't sit here and compare. It's like we do rings with girls or cars with boys and say, oh, my car is more bling than yours. Emotions, we cannot compare because there is no way of measuring. Everybody's threshold is different. So when people tell me, oh, but I haven't been through what you've been through for me to even talk about this because it's embarrassing. I'm like, no, because it shouldn't be compared. You should just supposed to learn from one another. If you can learn something from me, from my experience, I've been through it, so learn from it. Learn some nuggets from it, or learn how to deal with your experience. Don't compare it to me, because it's just not you're gonna always feel like you're the underdog. But I agree with the fact when you say, oh, come on, Spencer, just get on with it, Lurata. I still do that to myself, because now I find myself, I'm in a free world country where it allows me to work. I've got my family, I can travel freely. And then I look at countries that are at war, for example, or conflicts. Regardless of which side, I don't take sides, but I always go with the innocent and I say, oh my God, I got it better than them and I feel so sorry for them now. So they are worse off now. So there's always somebody else that is worse off than you are. And as long as we just be grateful for what we have. Because unless you're grateful for what we have, we can't get more of it. It's not going to work. If you're ungrateful, I can't fix this for you. Nobody can. So you got to be grateful to begin with. I wake up in the morning and I know exactly what triggers me and I choose the opposite. So if news triggers me, I listen to music. If getting straight into my emails triggers me because maybe something hasn't gone my way, because it's reliant on other people's decision, like a deal or whatever, I choose not to look at the email straight away. I go for a run or I do something. So you have to pick something that charges you for the day rather than something that triggers you in a negative way to be exposed to as soon as you wake up. Because when you wake up, you are so ready and you're most likely ready for positive. So you want to implement positive outcomes. So starting with something negative is just going to put you in the back foot. Like I watched your videos in the car. You're always like telling us about Dubai and the housing and the financial stuff, and it's information for people that can benefit from. And then you go and you hike. What a great way to start your day. You go and train, you motivate. You know how many people I see you motivate to go hiking with you? Are you a personal trainer? Honestly, you're doing your deed in a way that you think, because that shows what actually charges you, what motivates you, what gives you that, elevates you. So you are slowly exposing people to that. And although they might not know this, but they probably eventually will start seeing the pattern that what they are doing because you are doing it is positive, and maybe it's just what they need. So we got to lead by example, and I'm just trying to lead this world a better place than it was.
Lurata, I can't thank you enough.
Pleasure.
You're a beautiful human being, and I appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you, Spencer. I appreciate being here.